Yo, what's going on? Welcome to the Magic Sandwich Show. My name is Nate, and today we have a special guest on, Matt Slick. Now, I know if you watch this show, I know most of you guys know who Matt Slick is, and most of you are probably familiar with his argument. But today we've asked Matt to come on to present the arguments for God. I know we haven't delved in the religious part of the show for maybe a couple of weeks now. So I thought it was a good time to get back to this. And obviously, Matt Slick, I think, is one of the preeminent Christian apologists in our community. So Matt Slick, if Dragnot, if Mr. Producer will bring him on. Matt, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Magic Sandwich Show.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, we had a whole bunch of people. We sent out the challenge. Hey, come talk to Matt. Everybody says they can beat your argument, and very few people have signed up. So,
well, that's okay.
So I think confidence level on the atheist side is running low. I'm fearful. What's going on? We're supposed to, this is supposed to be the knockdown argument here. We're supposed to be able to get Slick. Now he's here. Now
I'm here.
I need
take
help.
A shot. Yeah.
So Matt, tell the people a little bit about yourself, because I've seen the debates with Matt Dillahunty, Aaron Ross. So you've been doing this for a while. What got you involved in the ministry?
Well, I'll give the short version, but when I was 17, I had a very, very dramatic conversion, the very presence of God. And I went from agnostic to a hardcore Christian inside of a minute. And no drugs, no alcohol, no sleep deprivation, no medications, no outward suggestions and all that stuff. It was him. And then later I started studying. I found out, because I have Asperger's. I didn't know that then, but I can remember patterns and numbers, and I was able to remember scriptures. And then people started asking questions, and I started answering them, and had this ability to remember scripture and arguments and things like that. And it just kind of flowed from there. And I ended up going to a Christian college and a seminary, and became an ordained minister. And then this thing called the internet came out, and I started CARM 24 years ago today.
Oh, wow. Oh,
today.
I don't know.
24 years ago.
Is it like a happy anniversary? I don't know if I should say happy anniversary, but
happy anniversary. Yeah, it was great. 24 years ago today, and I'm looking forward to 25, when it's 25 years old. I have a big shindig.
Yeah, you got to have do something. That's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Man, you're invited. We can have the pagan section, and then the Christian section, and we'll have big pagan over it, and go over and sit with you guys and enjoy your company.
Oh man, that's great. So 24 years. So so you started this one back in I like to call it the Wild West of the internet, when it was first fresh and new. How has it changed from when you first started? 24 years, a long time.
Well, remember, I'll be 63 in December, so I'm up there. Oh. And I was doing bulletin boards before the internet came out. Bulletin boards were just where you dialed up on the old phone, and that squawking sound, and you get on, you type something up, and then you get off, come back a few hours later, maybe somebody's responded, and you read it, then you could copy it and save it to your 3.5-inch floppy disk. And then on your hard, I had a hard drive that was this big. That's about that big, about a foot. And by this high and like this wide. And I would drop it and make it start. And I had a big 13-inch monitor. I was a pig. I had all this power and everything. Now, I mean, I got three right now, 27-inch 4K monitors with a system with it cranks fast. It's like, it's quick and slick. And so anyway, the internet's changed quite a bit. And praise God. And CARM's been seen by over 100 million people in every country. All over the world. I've got, I don't know, last count was 11,000 emails to answer. My radio show, really, is over 11,000. My radio show's on 14, 15, or 16 stations. Just finished a sci-fi novel, which I'll be publishing pretty soon, and got a few books out, blah, blah, blah. So,
hold on. You can't just slip past a sci-fi novel. What's this sci-fi novel about? You got to give us a little sneak peek. Come on.
It's called Time Trap. And so 6 people, 3 males, 3 females, awake out of hypersleep, and they're going to the Drake system, and Janice is the AI, and so they're talking and just doing stuff, and they notice a cloud. Genesis calls it a cloud. It's so far out there. And they just keep an eye on it as they're heading toward the Drake system, and the cloud starts moving towards them. And it turns out that this cloud is intelligent, and it travels, and it arcs to meet them. And then people die. There's screaming. There's not good times, and it gets bad, and stuff like that. So I've had a couple of people read the early draft. They said they liked it. One guy said he didn't like it at all because he started reading it at 1 o'clock in the morning and couldn't put it down until he was done at 4 or 5 in the morning. He lost sleep because of it. I said, "Oh, okay, well that's good. Good reason not to like it, I guess." He goes, "Darn you," like that. So,
well,
anyway.
hey, when it comes out, you definitely got to let us know, because I'm into sci-fi. I love all that type
Really?
of stuff. Yeah, oh yeah. I'm, if you look at some of my stuff, I'm a huge Star Wars, Star Trek, everything that deals with space and the beyond.
Really? Well, I was just watching documentaries on the universe last night. I'm a Trekkie, and George Takei.
Yeah.
He personally wrote me a letter. I have a personal letter from George Takei.
Oh wow.
He wrote me. I made a comment about his autobiography about his dad, and I liked his dad. And I said his dad's the kind of guy you want next door, and you go over and listen to his wisdom without letting him know you're listening to his wisdom. And this lady I talked to knew him, gave it to him, and he wrote me a letter. So I have from Captain Sulu. I have a letter.
Wow.
He said, "Thank
Captain Sulu. He'll always be Sulu, the guy who drives the ship. Captain
That's
Sulu.
Right.
He's gone.
I know.
Yeah, come on.
Amp him up a little bit. And I have a friend who has, get this, I can't believe it. He's here, only just a few miles from me. It's broken, like it broke in 2 pieces. The model of the Enterprise with William Shatner's signature handwritten on it, for real.
Oh, wow.
That'll be worth some coin.
Yeah, it's probably worth
it. Yeah, I read Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, Heinemann.
Right. But I know, because we were talking earlier, and you were telling me how well read you are, especially when it comes to Christian doctrine. What do you think is one of the things that most Christians, I would say, who think they know the Bible, what do you think are some things that they could do to maybe improve their understanding of biblical truths? Because I know, like, sometimes I hear maybe we should learn the Greek, maybe you should learn maybe the I forget the other translation of text, whatever. But what would be your advice?
What Christians need to do if they want to understand the Bible is get on their knees and pray and ask God to open up their heart and their mind to receive the word of truth as they study that word. God's word is alive. It's not like what most people say. It's just some book. And, no offense meant to atheists, but they'll say the Bible, I believe it is just a book. It's not just a book. But I tell Christians, be humble before your Lord and open your heart to him, and that's when he reveals himself. He doesn't reveal himself to the pride. He hides himself against the proud people. But if you want to learn, do it that way. You don't have to have a master's degree like I have, or have studied Greek or Hebrew. You can just read the word and keep studying, and the Lord will open up your heart and mind, and believe it. Don't let secular society tell you what is right and wrong. Believe the word of God.
Well, I know we have a couple of people who lined up today to try to hopefully figure this whole thing out. So I want to ask one thing at the beginning, is that the arguments that usually you put forward, because I've watched some of your stuff, and the arguments that you put forward, what are they trying to show? Like what's the overall theme that you're trying to go after? Because I some of them, it's convincing in the way where it's like, okay, if there is no God, then there's all this stuff can't be explained. And then some other ones, you go to the logical route, that something that's immaterial in those type of things. So what is the overall conclusion that your arguments are meant to put forward?
Well, you got to understand, I'm reformed in my theology. God is one who grants that people have faith. Philippians 1:29. You can't come to Christ unless it's been granted to you. John 6:65. He works faith in the person. John 6:38, 29. So why then do this if God's one who opens their hearts and their minds? Luke 24:45, for example. Well, because 1 Peter 3:15 and 2 Corinthians 10:5 says to give an answer to everyone and push back the gates of hell. Matthew 16:18. So my goal is to bring glory to God by hopefully refuting the answers of the unbelievers, and maybe God in his great grace might use that attempt to open their hearts and their minds. So that's what I hope to do, is bring glory to God in that process. Not that I always do, but that's the goal.
But we got over 50 people watching now. We got a couple of these unbelievers who are coming to see if their minds can be changed. So just a quick announcement. Please share the link, and if anyone wants to come in and speak with Matt is here for the next couple of hours. Just there's a email in the description. It tells you exactly what to do. You're just going to put now I know my producer Dragnet told me like 5 times what exactly to say, but I forgot what to say. But it's in the description. Send him an email with that particular description on top of the email, in the description, that thing of the email, and now I forget what it's called, in the title of the email. It's going to be in in the subject of the email, and he's going to put you on the list. So you'll be put on the list. So first, let me introduce Floyd FP. Drag, can you bring in Floyd FP? Hey, Floyd, what's going on?
Hey, Nate. Good. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming in. And I know I'm not sure if you and Matt Flick have spoken before. Have you guys spoken before, or?
We might have been on a hangout once or twice a long time ago, but I think it was just a brief encounter. Right. But nice to meet you again, Matt.
Nice meeting you.
All right, so let me step back, and the floor is yours, Floyd. I know you had some interesting questions that you wanted to present to Mac, so let's have at it.
Well, I know, Matt, that you're fond of the transcendental argument for God, and
others, but yeah.
The characteristic of a transcendental argument is to claim that something's necessary, a necessary precondition for something else that you're trying to explain or justify the existence for. But the problem with the transcendental argument is that I think it's quite a burden, where you basically have to show the impossibility of the contrary, and Reformed theologians have even felt that the transcendental argument simply isn't as effective as people would like to think. One example is Dr. K. Scott Opelfint. He's from the Westminster Theological Seminary, where Cornelius Van Til taught for 43 years. He's a professor of systematic theology and apologetics, and he states that he thinks the transcendental argument is overstated and overused more than often. And I quote him. He says, "It's only a tool for Van Til, something he picked out to use to explain something about Christianity. There's nothing silver bullet about it. Anybody can use it, as pointed out to me in class over and over again. Why can't Islam use this?" And he says, as a methodological approach, anyone can say impossibility of contrary, and my view is true and everyone else's is false. And he goes on to say that other worldviews are false, not because he's actually demonstrated the impossibility of contrary, but simply based on the virtue of God's grace that Christianity is true. So when it comes to your version of the transcendental argument, it seems like you're just basically asserting that only the Christian God, as you conceive the Christian God in your Reformed theology, can only account for things like logic or the use of induction or morality and so forth. But I think what's weak about your argument, which other people point out before, like Alex Malpass, simply really it boils down to an assertion, because you use an object and its negation as a disjunctive syllogism, which basically is useless, because it just basically states any possibility. It's like, imagine if I said either the color red tastes like chicken, or it's not the case that the color red tastes like chicken. Now, in that statement, I list all possibilities. So it's just not useful. And when you negate a negation, all you're basically left is saying is that the Christian God accounts for the laws of logic. Therefore, the Christian God accounts for the laws of logic. So it really just boils down to a mere assertion and question begging, really, because the conclusion is in one of the premises. So I think for your argument to be more effective, you basically have to show the impossibility of the contrary to where the Christian God, as you conceive it, does not exist. And I think that's a very tall order to meet, because there's many possibilities. You can kind of reduce it down to, well, either a Christian God exists or he doesn't exist, but that's fine. But within the set of the Christian God not existing, there are many different worldviews that I think you have to address. So the only way to show the impossibility of the contrary is actually disprove each one of those. I think that's quite difficult.
What do you want me to say? You said a lot of stuff.
Yeah, before you jump in, Matt, Floyd, can you just give us, for those of us who don't know what the transcendental argument is, can you just give us a brief overview of what that is? And that's just for the sake of the audience, because you mentioned it a couple of times.
Yeah, sure. A characteristic of a transcendental argument is to claim that something is necessary for something else to exist. For example, I think we all believe in banana splits, right? The banana split. Now, for a banana split to exist, it is necessary for bananas to exist. So imagine if I declare myself an a-bananist, like I don't believe in any bananas at all, but yet you observe me eating a banana split. So if you come to me and say, Floyd, well, you don't believe in bananas, but here you are eating a banana split. How do you account for the existence of a banana split if you don't believe in bananas? And I'd have to offer some sort of justification. You would say, you're not living according to your worldview, Floyd, because you don't believe in bananas, but here you are eating a banana split. How do you explain that? You don't seem to be living consistently towards your beliefs. So that's what a transcendental argument tries to show, that something is necessary for something else to exist. And usually in the past, a theist might bring up, how do you account for lightning or some other physical phenomena? And now that the God of the gaps have kind of gotten smaller and smaller in regards to physical phenomena, I think apologists, especially presuppositionalists, have moved on to more abstract notions such as mathematics, laws of logic, use of induction, immorality, abstract things rather than physical things like lightning, for example. Hopefully that explains what a transcendental argument is. And Matt, feel free to comment if you think if you want to elaborate more.
Yeah.
If you made an error.
Go ahead, Matt. It was just really just for the sake of the audience, because I personally am not familiar with the argument, so it's it actually helped me too. So go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry, Matt. Please. I know there was a lot to unpack there, so you can handle whichever way you choose.
There are varieties of the transcendental argument, but a transcendental is something that does not depend upon space or time for its actuality. And this is the nature of transcendentals. We all deal with transcendentals. So, for example, you may have a dog. I don't know if you guys have a dog. I have 2 cats. And so, I'm a cat person. I like cats. Okay. Well, if I go over to your house and you have a cat, I will say that's an instance of cat. And I have a cat too. Well, what kind of your cat? They said, what's your cat's name? And so if one of our cats were to die, the essence of catness, the transcendental nature of what catness is, does not die with it. What we're observing is a particular instance of catness. Or if you have a table in your kitchen, I have a table in my kitchen. We see the transcendental nature of what we identify as tables. And if I were to destroy my table, it doesn't mean tableness is destroyed. If I were to write number 2 on a chalkboard, and you were to write number 2 on a piece of paper where you are, and we're hundreds of miles apart, what we're seeing is an instance of the transcendental nature of what we call two-ness. If I were to erase that two or cross it out, two-ness is not destroyed. So what we're seeing is an instance of something. All right, now this is similar to Platonic norms, but that has its problems. So when we look at, for example, mathematics, 2 plus 2 equals 4. We have two-ness, plusness, two-ness, equalness, four-ness. And there's logic involved in all of these things. And we can talk about that issue of the logic here a little bit. So what we're doing is we're identifying transcendentals. We're identifying the transcendental nature of 2 and equals and 4. We'll just say 2 and 4 here, make it quick and easy. So the transcendental nature of things is what we can identify. And you would agree there's a transcendental aspect to 2 and 4 as all numbers and things like that. And when you say 2 plus 2 equals 4, it's a logical statement. And the funny thing is about these logical statements, and I'm going to say this for a reason, it might become evident later or necessary later, is that 2 plus 2 equals 4 works in reality. Math relates to actuality. If we were to, all three of us, build a roller coaster on paper or on a CAD system, computer system, using physics and trig and calculus and all this stuff, and then we're to print up these plans and people build it, it works. Even though we haven't touched a nail or a bolt or a piece of metal. And the reason it works is because mathematics works. If it works in our office, all three of us are working in an office, and we come up with this roller coaster, we can send the plans across the country and people build it and it works. And we could build it outside our next door and it works. Because there's a transcendental nature to how math and logic work in the real world. And they relate to the real world. Well, what must be in place in order for those transcendentals to have actuality? The funny thing is, if I were to say that blue sleeps faster than Wednesday, or that red tastes like chicken, which are logical non sequiturs, you know that they're logical non sequiturs because you recognize the transcendental laws of logic. You recognize, for example, that something is what it is and is not what it is not. You recognize that statements are either true or false. That a statement cannot contradict itself, be both true and false at the same time in the same sense. It's called the second law of logic. And the third law, basically the classical logic, law of excluded middle, statements are either true or false. So if I were to, say something like it tastes like chicken, it's a non sequitur, it doesn't make any sense, and we can identify that it doesn't make any sense where you're sitting, and where I'm sitting. Because we identify and acquire, obtain these laws of logic that are not dependent upon us, but are there. So if I were to say 2 plus 2 equals 3, you'd say that's incorrect. And each of us would say that is incorrect, excuse me. And the reason we would do so is because we know these laws of logic and we can identify the error. And it'd be true where you are and where I am. And yet we're in different places. So what we're doing is not obtaining laws that are created in our own minds, because my mind is different than your mind. And I might say that atheism is false, and you might say that atheism is true. And so which mind is correct? If the laws of logic are the product of human minds, well, there's all kinds of problems with that. But how come our minds are different and then we'd have different laws of logic and contradict, and we couldn't have any way to converse, and we might as well say that red tastes like chicken or blue sleeps faster than Wednesday. But the fact is that we recognize truth because we recognize what these transcendentals are. What then must be in place for these transcendentals to be in place? That's the question. These laws of logic, for example, or the transcendental nature of certain morals, or certain truth statements, whatever it might be, or the very fact that you have two-ness, four-ness, table-ness, chicken-ness, or whatever it might be, a transcendental quality or nature. And you can remember something. They're not simply the product of human minds, because human minds are finite, not transcendental. And they're not products of the physical realm either. And the reason they're not properties or products of the physical realm is because properties can be measured. So I have my phone, a nice Galaxy 9. I like this thing, Galaxy Note 9, good stuff. I don't have a 10. I like this with a little. Anyway, so it has properties, doesn't it? It has certain mass, and it has certain shape and certain characteristics, and it causes sound. And so properties can be measured, the volume, the weight, the mass, and things like that. So that if the laws of logic are properties of the physical universe, or these transcendentals are properties of the physical universe, then they should be measurable, but they're not measurable. You don't take a picture of the number 2. Hey, I got number 2 right here. Here it is. I got it in a jar. Don't let it out. All the equations fail because now 2 can't be part of their equations. It doesn't work like that. No, the transcendentals have a nature that's separate from the physical universe, that's separate from our minds. And where do they come from? And how is it we obtain them? In Christianity, we would say, since we're made in the image of God, we can, because the laws of logic proceed out of God's infinite transcendent mind. And we're made in the image of God, Genesis 1:26 and 28, being made in his image, what we call the communicable attributes. That's a little theology lesson I can give you guys if you want. But the attributes that belong to God that can be communicated, that we can participate in. He loves, we love. He hates, we hate. He thinks, we think. And we can think his thoughts after him. Christianity has the answer. Now, if you're an atheist, then, how do you account for the universal laws of logic? How do you account for the universal transcendentals that exist, that you obtain, but are not dependent upon the physical universe and not dependent upon you? How do you obtain them? You use them. But you see, Christianity, and I would say Christianity alone, because of the one mini problem of monism versus pluralism, and only in the Christian Trinity can we have something that is separate in the particular sense from the created order of what it is in a monistic idea. So therefore, Islam wouldn't work. And that's a whole other topic. But you see, if these laws, these transcendentals, I'm going to make a statement here, that all transcendentals are abstractions. 2 is an abstraction in the mind. 2 plus 2 is a statement that occurs in the mind. I'm almost 63 years old. I can't believe I'm almost that age. In December, I'll be 63. Man, that just blows me away. But at any rate, oh, and today is when I celebrate the anniversary of CARM's founding 24 years ago today. Okay, so these are statements of truth. Now, there are universal qualities of statements of truth, like 2-ness, 4-ness, chickenness, blueness, and all this other kind of stuff. As an atheist, how do you account for those transcendental natures? How do you account for the ubiquity, the transcendental, absolute, qualitative, immutable nature of these transcendentals by which we are then able to argue, live, communicate, expose error? Well, as an atheist, I propose that you can't. Because you have no transcendental mind, and you can't, it's called grounding. You can't ground the transcendentals in materialism. Doesn't work. And as Floyd mentioned, the God of the gaps thing, well, there's the science of the gaps, and there's the atheistic faith of the gaps. It works both ways, double-edged sword. At least in Christianity, we would say that the universal abstractions, the universal transcendentals, which are abstractions, they occur here. 2-ness occurs here. You don't take a picture and you can't hold it. It's here. And they're universal. Therefore, we'd say there's a universal mind. And of course, I will only defend the Christian God. And therefore, the Christian God can explain how these universals can occur, and where the atheist one can't. That's a good argument. And if anybody wants to come up and say, this is how they can be done, then please do it. And then we can have a discussion on how you can posit and justify from a non-theistic worldview the idea of universal abstractions that are not dependent upon space and time, but have universal truth values.
Now, before Floyd answers, I want to say to all the heroes in the chat who have a lot to say, email Dragnot and get up on in here, because it's easy to play hero type in the chat and hard to play it right here. Floyd's in the hot seat. So I know, Floyd, I know you're ready to respond, but I just want to make sure, let everybody know. Send an email to Drags in the subject line. You want to engage Matt Slick, and you'll be put on the list. Sorry for that. Go ahead, Floyd.
Yeah, I don't see how a mind, let alone the mind of God, can really offer an account for these transcendentals you talk about. You compare logic to math, which I think we can, and I think we can justify, or not justify, but I think we can account for logic like we can account for math, where math is is descriptive abstraction of quantities, just like geometry is a descriptive abstraction of the relationship between spatial uh, uh, relationships and so forth. So is logic. Logic is it's a descriptive abstraction which refers to relationship between propositions that deal with possibility, necessity, and impossibility, and so forth. So I think these things can be conceived of with a mind, but I don't see how they can come from a mind. For example, think of a possible world that only exists two rocks. The only thing that exists in this world are two rocks. Well, just by the fact you're having two rocks, okay, you now have identities. You have two identities, two rocks. You now have a relationship between two rocks. You now have a mathematical relationship to two rocks. You have one rock plus another rock, which gives you two rocks. Now, if there's no mind in this universe, there's nothing. There's no mind to apprehend or conceive or witness those things. But that doesn't take away from the truth value of those rocks having identities. That the one rock plus the other rock adds up to two rocks, and so forth. So I really don't see how a God is really necessary for those abstractions to exist. Those abstractions exist simply because of the nature of identities existing in itself. For an identity to be, it's something that needs to have an identity. So there alone, you have one of the principles of classical logic. So again, I don't see how a mind is necessary. Logic really cannot be a reflection of a mind, but rather it is a reflection by a mind of concepts.
Okay, I'm writing.
Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, you begged the question incredibly a great deal. Sorry, okay. Math is descriptive abstraction. So in order to say that, you assume the validity of the laws of logic by assuming the validity of the law of identity. To say math in the first place, you know what math is as a concept, which is an abstraction. Math occurs in the mind, or in well-designed, designed by intelligently designed computers. But math is something that occurs here. And just to say it's a descriptive abstraction is really kind of it's an interesting phrase that I could take apart from different degrees, but you do admit that it's an abstraction. So you do admit that it occurs in the mind. Yet at the same time, you assume the validity of the laws of logic by which you then can make that statement. And you said logic is a descriptive abstraction as well. I'm typing this out as you said this. If I misquoted you, just tell me I misquoted you. Sorry about that. Not intending to at all. Right. And then, so I could ask you.
Equivocating what I'm saying.
I'm sorry?
I think you're equivocating what I'm saying. I think we need to distinguish between language, the use, and the application of logic and math and so forth.
You're conflating.
To what it refers to.
Well, let me continue on with what I said in your notes. You said if the only thing that exists are two rocks. If the only thing that exists is two rocks, you wouldn't know, and there wouldn't be any mathematical relationship because there wouldn't be any math. If the only thing that exists is two rocks, you somehow making a logical self-refuting statement by saying the only thing that exists are two rocks, and you say yet there's a mathematical relationship. Yet you said math is descriptive and abstraction. Abstractions occur in the mind, so you're contradicting yourself.
No, not at all.
Yes, you are. Does an abstraction occur in the mind or not?
the use or application or the description is language based, and that is purely a product of the mind.
Does an abstraction occur in the mind?
The representation of the concept occurs in the mind. What it
Can you
refers
define what an abstraction is then?
Well, an abstraction is not concrete. It's relationship. It's relational. But
it deals with ideas.
Logic is a representation of a relationship between concepts. Logic is not those things.
Okay.
Logic addresses those things.
You spoke for a long time.
You can't conflate the description of something with something else. When I say there's two rocks, when I describe 1 + 1 = 2, that's a description of the phenomena, right? But what I'm actually representing or describing is independent of my mind. So I'm simply describing the varieties of one rock plus the other rock equal 2 rocks, right? You wouldn't say those 2 rocks don't exist if a mind that's not present to conceive it doesn't exist, would you? Would you willing to accept, unless you're an idealist, I'm not sure if you're an idealist or not, that things can exist outside of mind?
If you're going to be making statements, and I want to respond to your statements, and then you ignore the statements that I'm getting on and go for a different direction, we're really not going to have a conversation.
Well, I think I'm addressing your point.
No, you're not. I asked you a question. Does an abstraction occur in the mind? I asked you to define what an abstraction is. You didn't do a very good job of it. An abstraction is an idea, something that occurs. It's in the mind by nature and essence. Does an abstraction occur in the mind?
No, the concept of the abstraction occurs in the mind.
Okay, let's look up what an abstraction is. We always got to define our terms, okay?
No. Motion is abstract. Time is abstraction. Space is abstract. Rate, deceleration, portability, leftness, rightness. Those are all abstract.
Can I?
And those are abstractions, not only about our actual material world, but for other possible worlds at all. So no, you're not correct at all.
I'm reading from dictionary.com, an abstract or general idea or term, an act of considering something. That's something that occurs in the mind, consideration. An impractical idea, something visionary and unrealistic. The act of taking away or separating, withdrawal, secret removal, absent-mindedness. So we understand abstractions occur in the mind. An abstraction is something that is by definition of the mind. If you're not going to admit that, we really can't have a conversation, because you're just defining things. Is portability
an abstraction?
Okay.
Well,
maybe we go to the next guest,
because
I'm having a difficulty just having a conversation without having to fight my way through just a simple definition. And when I go through the definition, I'm being argued with about the very nature of the definition. This is what's necessary in order to get done.
Conceiving a concept is a mental act.
Hold on.
Doesn't follow what you're conceiving, or the object of what you're conceiving is itself a mental act.
Hold on, let me step.
Therefore, we should consider it mental.
Let me step in here. We have like another 5 minutes, but what I do want to ask is that it seems like the contention here is, I think Matt asked a specific question, and it seemed like what he was saying was the statement that you had made earlier, Floyd, about the 2 rocks. If we're in a universe where there's only 2 rocks. And then you made some statements about those 2 rocks. We know there's 2 rocks and that type of thing. And I think Matt's counter to that seemed to be, well, you've labeled them with all these abstract concepts, them there being 2 rocks, them being this, them being that. But if there was no minds, then those concepts wouldn't even exist in this particular, the 2 rocks would be meaningless because there would be no minds to describe them as 2 rocks, or that. So the abstract concepts that are in someone's mind wouldn't even be available to describe them as 2 rocks. So to say there are 2 rocks in the universe, there are only 2 rocks, is really a meaningless statement. It seems like that's what. Am I misquoting your?
You're on the right track. Yeah, I'm trying to show him that his whole premise is unfounded and ultimately self-refuting.
So an understanding, like do you believe that logic is incorrect that Matt is pointing out? The fact that your premise or your hypothetical with two rocks, only there being a universe with only two rocks, then you couldn't define them as two rocks anyway, because there would be no mind to apply those abstract concepts to those two rocks.
Right. There's no mind to describe it, but that doesn't take away from the existence of the two rocks and the relationship between them. Again, there's no mind to conceive it. Again, Matt's doing a false equivocation here. He's equivocating the description of the concept
with conflation.
With the content of the concept itself.
No, what you're saying is you're accusing me of conflation, not equivocation.
Well, yeah, perhaps you could do that, but you are equivocating, I think.
So what you're doing is when you say that there's the only thing that exists are two rocks, and then what you have said earlier, math is a descriptive abstraction. A description is something that is something that a human does.
Right.
And an abstraction occurs in the mind. That's what abstractions are. Look them up on the dictionary. I've just been doing this and repeatedly saying the same thing. A general idea rather than one relating to a particular object, person, or situation, an abstract concept, idea, or term. You're the one saying that math, and I agree with you, math is a descriptive abstraction. I have no problem with that. And you say logic is a descriptive abstraction as well. Then you say there's two rocks, and the only thing that exists is two rocks. Well, first of all, that you can't explain how that is a reality, that the only thing that can exist two rocks, because how is that possible in your worldview? How do you have, are they infinitely old rocks? How do you do this? Is your situation by which you're trying to posit something in order to refute me even realistic or logically possible? A lot of times what atheists do is they offer logical impossibilities, and then they want me to argue against their logical impossibility. I don't have to. All I can do is say, it doesn't make any sense. Your argument doesn't even start to make sense. You can't have only two rocks.
Why not? What's logically inconsistent about that?
Well, hold on. Because we're running short on time. I'm going to let Floyd respond, and then we're going to just move on to the next guest because of the time frame. So go ahead, Floyd. Please respond. I'm sorry.
What's logically inconsistent about a universe where only two rocks exist? Where's the logical contradiction in that?
Are the two rocks eternally two rocks?
You could have those two rocks pop into existence and pop out of existence every 10 years. It wouldn't make a difference.
They pop in and out of existence?
Yes.
Are they caused to pop in and out of existence, or they just do it on their own?
It's just the nature of their being. It could even be different rocks. It could even be different rocks each time it comes about. It could be eternal. It's fine. We can go with two eternal rocks. That's fine as well.
Well, we'll do that. But if you say they have a nature, they could pop into existence, that means there's a time when they don't exist. But if they don't exist, you can't have any attributes by what they can do anything. It doesn't make any sense. It's logically self-refuting.
They wouldn't exist at that time, right?
Yeah, and then they have to have the ability to perform an action in order to bring about their own existence. But they have no existence. There is nothing. With nothingness, there's no attribution, no quality, no ability. You to offer something,
they wouldn't need it. They wouldn't need the ability.
Well, hold on. Unfortunately, I have to stop at this particular point in time.
Let me just say, he's offering ridiculousness and then defending the absurd. And I can show you why he's wrong.
Logical contradiction in what I
when I try, he keeps interrupting.
Hold on, guys. Hold on. Listen, Floyd, thank you so much for coming on. And this was very nice. And it seems like you guys are going to need some more time, because I understand what Floyd's saying and I understand what Matt's saying, and it seems like a little tussle. But Floyd, again, thanks for coming on. You put forth some great arguments. But unfortunately, we have to move on so we can get the other people in. Thank you, and please, we can't wait to have you again. Any last words, Floyd? Does you want to say anything before he gets out of here? Any last words?
Thanks for having me.
All right, now thanks for coming on, and please check out Floyd's channel. I don't know if Floyd has a channel, but we have now another brave soul who wants to talk with Matt.
Brave soul.
So please.
I hope I get to finish my sentences.
Well, go ahead. And please introduce yourself, and what would you like to talk to Matt about?
My name is Andy. I go by the nickname of Andricus and other places. Matt and I have talked before on Discord a couple of times.
What's your nick? Andy what?
Andricus is my nickname on Discord.
Andrew Kess?
Andricus.
Andrew.
Andricus. You can just call me Andy. Just call me Andy. It's fine.
Okay, Andy.
It'll be easier.
Right.
We've talked before about my past. I was a fundamental Christian up until about the age of 35. In the last 15 years, I haven't been. My question is always, why does the theist, specifically the fundamental Christian theist, have such a problem, or why is I don't know such a terrifying answer as far as dealing as far as dealing with the origins of life, the universe, all those questions? The cause. Why is I don't know? Is I don't know seem like a dishonest answer to you?
No,
to those kind of questions?
No, it's not dishonest. It means you don't know.
So if we don't know, if a person says I don't know, even if they've been presented with all the options that are available, all the different belief systems that have popped up over the centuries, and if they still say, look, this is not convincing to me, I still don't know, and I don't think we can know, what would you say to a person like that?
To say I don't know, okay, you don't know. If the person wants to have a dialogue, I could ask, why don't you think you don't know? I mean, it's not the best question, but you just start digging and finding out. If the person says, I don't think we can know, then he's making an assertion. And the assertion is that he has a personal belief that he doesn't believe it's possible to know, for example, if God exists or not.
Right.
And then what I would do is just say, well, okay, why would you say that? And I want you to know that when I say this, I'm not looking for I got him. You watch it. Everybody wants me to destroy him. That's not what I'm doing. Okay.
Right.
If you see me on Discord, I'm trying to be as polite as possible.
Sure.
And nice and everything. I even tell the admin stuff, be nice, guys, be nice. Even though they're flaming heretics and they're wrong about everything, but it's okay. And so anyway, and I'm glad you guys can laugh at that joke, because I mean it in a nice way. But I like to ask people why they don't know things, why they are where they're at. I want to get to understand them as individuals, because you have two unbelievers here. No disrespect meant to you. I don't mean that as a derogatory, pejorative sense, but you have different reasons why you don't believe in the one true and living God. You'll end up in the same place. But if you continue to deny him, and that's not me threatening, it's just me informing, okay, because I care about you, and I do. I think I like Nate better than I like you, because Nate's pretty cool. Nate and I get along. He's all right.
I'm a bad atheist now. You're trying to destroy my atheist career.
Oh, hey, wait a minute. You mean if I say I like you, that's going to be bad for you?
Nah, man, it's not. I'm just messing around.
Oh, hey, I can screw with you pretty badly. Nate and I go way back. So, yeah.
One of the cool discussions that we had one time was about, according to a specific portion of Christian theology, is about what the goal is for the believer and what the promises are for the believer in the afterlife. And the dilemma I saw between growing up in the theology and seeing a story presented where the goal for the believer and the promise for the Redeemer, for the believer, is to end up in an eternal existence with God, with a perfect body, a sinless existence, not able to sin, no suffering, no shedding, no tears, all these things. And I couldn't resolve the dilemma of if that is possible for a human being to be given this quote unquote glorified body with this perfect existence. I couldn't resolve the dilemma of what the necessity of all the things in between, if it was possible for God to design and give a human a perfect existence as a reward for believing. What is the point of all the thousands upon thousands, or however long you believe we've been around, of untold depths of human suffering, and the continued eternal suffering of humans with eternal punishment for not believing? I couldn't resolve the dilemma of what's the point if it's possible for God to create and give a human a body and existence where sin is impossible. I couldn't resolve that dilemma.
Wait, was that last statement? That what possible? What?
Where if it's possible for God to give a creature, a human being, a glorified body and being incapable of sinning and living in a perfect existence for all eternity and presence with Him, why wasn't that possible from the beginning?
Why didn't he do that from the beginning?
Mm-hmm. Why the collateral damage? I guess the simple way is why all the collateral damage.
I don't know.
You just said you don't know because you started
Fair
out
enough.
with saying I
Fair
don't know
enough.
it's an
Fair
acceptable
enough.
answer.
That's
so.
fair enough.
However, I said that tongue in cheek, but I could offer some possibilities.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And so I could just say I don't know, because I could say I'm not privy to the infinite mind of God, and he certainly has reasons for doing things that we're not aware of. And the fact that you don't know does not mean he doesn't exist or has a sufficient reason. The problem with your position of not liking something, no offense meant, is it's just your opinion. That's not to say your opinion isn't worth something. It's worth something to you, and I consider it to be of some value. You're made in the image of God, and you have questions, and I want to take that seriously and not disrespect you in that.
I appreciate that.
And so, at least not publicly. Maybe your face, if I no, but it's hard to see your face. You're in the dark there.
Sorry.
Oh no, stay in the dark. It's better.
Oh, okay. Crap. All right. Sorry.
Okay, so there is a sense in which I could say, well, you know what? It's a good question, and I don't have the greatest answer for you because there are just some problems, and the problems aren't that God. It's not that they're illogical or not possible, but that there are some difficulties here, and there really are. So I acknowledge that. But let me offer some stuff that might soothe the problem a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe. Okay.
All right.
And I took some notes. So if I misrepresent you, just tell me that's not what you're saying, and we'll go on. I'm just trying to type as I'm listening.
All right.
The goal for the believer is to exist with God. Actually, it's not correct. The goal of the believer is to enjoy God and glorify him forever. A subtle difference, but just so you know, the ultimate end of us is to bring glory to God. And how that can be done through the damnation of the wicked as well as the glorification of the saved. And I can go into that. I could talk about that. You said, if I wrote this right, then what is the point of death, of so many, the death of those who go to hell? What's the point of them? There is an answer to that, or I have an answer. And you said, if it is possible to give someone glorified body, why didn't he do it from the beginning? I think these are good questions. Why do you have to go through all this? Here's my theory, or a theory, all right? Take it or leave it. 1 John 4:8, God is love. And John 3:16, God so loved the world, he gave. By the way, are you a parent by any chance?
Yeah.
Okay. So then you would know, I'm a parent, you would know that you'd give your life for your child. I mean, you take a bullet for your child, you throw the child out of the way of a speeding car, get killed, you do that kind of thing because that's the nature of what it means to love. Love is other-centered. Love is sacrificial. That's what it is. And may it never happen that your child would be injured. I just use that as an example.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course.
Okay. So we know what it means to love because we're parents. It's a good way to kind of compare. Well, if God is love and he says what he says the greatest act of love is to lay down your life for your friend. John 15:13, Jesus says that. Greater love has no one than this, but he lay his life down for his friend. All right. The greatest act of love is self-sacrifice. Well, here's a question. In the Christian economy, how does God, who is love, and Jesus, who's God in flesh, according to the scriptures, enact the greatest act of love, which is self-sacrifice? He can't do that in a world that doesn't exist. He can do it in a world that does exist and in a world in which creatures fall and rebel against him. So let me put that aside for 1 second. God alone has a quality called holiness. Holiness is the inability to sin. Holiness is a pervasive presence. And I've been in that. I've been in that presence when I first got saved. A very, very profound. I understand it. I remember it. But it's the holiness that belongs to God alone. It doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to me. You and I are defective. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. So I believe, this is my opinion, that any sentient being that exists will end up sinning against God. Now, there are angels, according to 1 Timothy 5:21, I believe, the elect angels, the angels chosen not to fall. And we have all fallen, but we fell in Adam. Now, this is a doctrine called federal headship, where the male, not the female, male represents the descendants. In Adam all die, 1 Corinthians 15:22. Eve sinned first, but sin entered the world through Adam, Romans 5:12. Now, so we have these different concepts. We have representation of God in man. We're made in his image. And because we're like him in many ways, we have responsibility. We have responsibility. We can think. We can act. And so God put Adam and Eve in the garden, but they're not holy because only God is holy. And they ended up falling.
Am I getting from this that you don't believe that man will have the ability not to sin with the glorified body? Is that what I'm getting from this?
There's different senses in which that can be understood to be not have the ability. So let me get to that later.
Okay.
Yes and no and yes. So with Adam and Eve, the biblical theology, when they sinned, we fell in them. Now, God didn't have to create the universe, but if he did, insofar as to be able to demonstrate the greatest act of love, he created a world in which it was necessary that they fall. Because they're not holy in their nature, they're going to fall by nature. And they do. And so that's the effect of sin, rebelling against God, is separation from him. And the consequence of that is in the world. And it wasn't until Adam and Eve acted like atheists that things went bad. When they started, seriously, when they started saying, I'll decide what's true, I'll decide what's morally right, I'll decide what I want to do, etc. That's an independence from God. And that independence from God brought suffering and condemnation. And so the consequence of that is in the world. Now, could God have made someone in a glorified body that they would never sin? I think it's possible in one sense, but maybe not in another. Because a question we asked in seminary is, could God have made the world better than it was? Just an open question. In one sense, yes, and in another sense, no. But how would we know either way? If God knows all things and he does all things perfectly, then can he make anything better? Well, no, because it wouldn't be better according to his infinite knowledge. So then, is this the best world we can have? If it's the best world we can have, why is there sin and suffering in it? Well, there's sin and suffering in the world because we rebelled against God. Well, why did he let us rebel? Because we have freedom. He gave it to us in his image. And with that freedom comes responsibility. And so he made us to express his own love for us. We rebelled against him. And we shake our fist up in the air saying, why is there suffering in the world, God? And God's going, well, you're the ones bringing it about, not me. You have you have autonomy. You live in the world and you walk around and you hurt each other and you don't do what I say. You don't listen to what I say. And then you complain when things go bad.
Okay, so let's get to the next. Let's get to the part that I have the issue with, though.
Okay.
What is going to happen with the glorified body then? So it sounds like what you're saying. I heard you say something a little earlier. You said you think yes and no. You weren't really clear on where do you think the being, whatever that being will be, they will be when they're given that glorified body, and they will be existing in God's proximity or whatever, however they describe it. Do you believe they will be able to sin?
I don't know.
Just FYI, we have another 3 minutes for the conversation.
Okay. Quickly. I don't know if we'll be able to sin because when I was born again, which is a very unusual story, it doesn't happen to very many people, but the presence of God was so profound, I was not able to sin against him in his presence. But I still retained the ability to rebel against him, but it was not to be exercised. The illustration I give is, in a room full of objects with a single light, there are shadows. But if that light is everywhere, there are no shadows. Shadows are technically possible of being present, but they can't be. And so I don't know if in a glorified body, we will lose the ability to sin because we'll be so transformed that our freedom will still be there, but we'll be in a different sense. I don't know if that's the case, or if it's going to be the case that his presence will be upon us so much that we can, but we won't. And so in that sense, we can't. Make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I couldn't, one of the reasons I stopped believing is because I couldn't resolve the sense of gosh, what's the right word? I just couldn't resolve the dilemma between the necessity of the suffering we're going through here on earth now and the continued suffering that the Bible teaches for those who don't believe. I just can't understand the necessity of that collateral damage if the other existence is possible to a God who's supposedly omnipotent and all the omnis, that it would be clearly possible for him to set up that kind of existence from the beginning according to the biblical narrative. And that's one of the reasons I just couldn't hang on to it anymore. I just couldn't see the justification in that.
We should talk, because I can answer more of those things.
Okay.
And we could talk about that. I've wrestled with those things, and I'm not saying I've got all the answers, but these are issues that the suffering is something, and my conclusion is that he uses it to redeem us and to express the greatest act of love. How much suffering are we to remove? So are we to remove the suffering of the murderer who shoots that little girl, you know, or does the pedophile, does that? That's evil. That's suffering, right? Well, what about, let's go down the line. We've got to get off the mic here. But what about, you know, you have a bad thought and it causes you suffering. Should God stop you there? How much, you know, this issue of how much suffering and what standard should it stop at? What's the level you want?
I think we're kind of mixing.
Well,
we're kind of jumping back and forth between the two parts of the topic. But
yes, we are. We don't have enough time.
Yeah,
we don't need to talk about it in depth.
Unfortunately, time is run a little short.
All
but listen,
good.
Thank you so much for coming by, and please,
absolutely,
you know, next time, please come back again. You know, we like the tussle. We're going to get someone else in here, but again, thanks for coming on.
You too, man.
Okay.
All right, Matt, we're 2 down, man. It's getting hot inside here all of a sudden now. Here we go. So introduce yourself. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Hey there. I guess I go by the name Shingen.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So do you have a question for Matt?
Yep.
Sure.
So if I may sort of introduce what I'm kind of talking about. So I am an atheist, right? I don't believe in any god or gods because I have never encountered any evidence for their existence. However, despite my pretty cynical, if that's a proper term here, attitude towards the religions, I do honestly value the truth, and I would have no problem with accepting actual evidence for her existence or whatever. Now, let me just say now, if God is omniscient, all-knowing, then he knows what would convince me that he exists, right? He knows what would be that kind of evidence. Even if I can't phrase it, he is omnipotent after all. Omniscient, sorry. If God is omnipotent, all-powerful, then he is able to do whatever that would convince me. Now, if God wants me to believe in him, for example, for the purpose of saving my soul, etc., then why doesn't he do that? And basically, from that line of thought, the question to Matt is, why should I accept, or sort of don't take it personally, why should I even listen to your abstract argument for his existence, for the existence of a God who clearly doesn't care about me believing in him, since he doesn't provide any evidence of his existence whatsoever, and he seems to be doing everything in his might to pretend that he actually does not exist.
Do you want to believe in God?
I don't want to believe in him, but I also don't want to not believe in him. You know, I care about the truth, and whatever it is, I want to be right, basically. And if he exists, then sure, then I would like to know that he exists.
So what would the evidence be that you would accept for God's existence?
Well, as I kind of said partially, that even if I can't phrase it really well, then God since he's omniscient, then he
would know.
would know.
I
Yes.
know. I got the notes on that. But what you tell me, what would be sufficient evidence for you?
Well, some repeatable, maybe not a repeatable test, because then
A
I
repeatable
suppose
test.
well, maybe not necessarily, because then he would sort of have to
Can I
act.
address that?
He would have to act repeatedly, and it's really hard
Can I
to.
address a repeatable test problem?
Yeah.
If you could test it repeatedly, then that means that it's materialistic. But that's not what God is. So
Well, it's either materialistic or simply God acts every time in that same way, right?
you
It's
would not be able to
possible.
tell if God existed or not by that. So
Yes.
that
Yes.
can't work. A repeatable test wouldn't work. You got anything else?
Okay. Yeah. Well, something miraculous, right?
Well, hold on.
Something
Whatever it
miraculous.
means.
Well, hold on. Can I ask just for a point of clarification here?
Yeah.
It seemed like what's your name again? Sorry, I can't see it.
Excuse me. I'm going to mute myself and use the restroom. I'm
Sure.
not trying to be rude, but I
no,
can
no.
still listen because I'll take this with me. So
Go ahead.
I apologize, but I'll be able to hear you. Okay, give me about a minute.
Sure.
Just be sure to mute.
Yeah, mute yourself. We don't want to hear the tingling in the toilet, or the screaming, right? Dropping some loads in there. No, what I was going to ask, Matt, is that you've already conceded the fact that you wouldn't know what would be convincing evidence. But obviously, whatever that would be, God would be able to do it. So that's what I was going to ask Matt. Instead of having you kind of go through all these what ifs for evidence, whatever evidence would be, any evidence that would be sufficient for you to believe, God could do it. And we would all agree with that. So it seems like the point, just trying to move forward from that point. You know what I mean?
Yep. Well, since he can't answer.
Yeah, but what do you but is that what you're trying? Because that's what you're trying to say, right? Like the fact that you don't know what would convince you is doesn't really matter, because whatever God could convince you, correct?
Yeah. Yes. I probably could come up with some specific case, specific situation, specific, I don't know, specific miracle.
Let me help you out.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, because that's what we're talking about. We're saying that because he's saying that whatever is going to convince him, God obviously is going to be able to do it. No one can say so. So he's saying that he's saying God can do it. Why isn't God just giving me whatever evidence it is, no matter what it could be?
The reason I was asking what would work for you is because I was trying to find out what level of belief or disbelief you want, because what God often does is give you what you want. Certainly, God can override what you want. Do you want him to override your freedom of choice and will and make you believe?
Well, I would say that his omniscience logically overrides my free will, but whatever.
But that's a specific question. Do you want him to override your freedom?
I don't think that it's necessary. So
no,
I would not.
But if it's necessary,
I don't.
You wouldn't want him to. Okay, that's the answer to the question. So you wouldn't want him to override your free will. Okay, your freedom. Yeah. Would you want him to do something just like he did to me? I was an agnostic and got tricked into walking up front at a church, and then bam, the very presence of the Holy Spirit himself, wham, and I had no choice but to believe. It was impossible for me not to believe at that point. Would you like that to happen to you?
That sounds weird.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was weird. The very presence of the Holy Spirit himself overshadowed me with such great power that all I could do was throw my face to the carpet and yell and scream out my agonizing tears of repentance, because I was in the presence of incredible holiness, and all I could do was moan and groan from my spine, the very deepest part of my heart and soul, and I was in the presence of incredible holiness. Yeah, that sounds weird. That's what happened. So,
but
do you want that to happen?
If I may ask, do you think that you were sort of forced by God to do it, or were you just it just happened because of what he did at one point before?
If I shine a light in your eyes, you're going to squint.
Yeah.
I didn't force you to squint. You chose to. It's a necessary result of that light. The necessary result of the presence of God upon your soul is belief in him and trust in him. Do you want him to do that to you?
I suppose if that's, if the only way would be to shine the light in my eyes, then I suppose whatever it takes. Now the thing
Do you
is,
want him to do that to you?
I don't think that would be a form of overriding my freedom, because
But I ask a question. Do you want him to do that?
I suppose if he did that,
Okay. Not if he did it. Do you want him to do that with you?
it would be one of the ways he could do that. I
Okay,
suppose.
see, you don't answer the question. And
I don't know how. Like, I don't necessarily want him to do specifically that,
okay.
because I'm maybe there are different ways.
So you don't want him to override your freedom, and you don't want him to reveal himself to you in such a way, and yet you want to know what the truth is. Where's the problem then? Is it not with God?
Because you make it, you form it in a way that it would like touch my soul, like it would
How do you know it would be
be. I wouldn't, but the thing is, you're giving an example of something like very internal experience that I would react to in some way. If that's
How
a
about
good
this?
way to represent that.
You spoke about evidence, okay? Oh,
Yeah.
and evidence is something that I understand why you would want that. And it's not ridiculous to say, I want some sort of evidence. I want some reason. You say, I want a reason to believe.
Did I say reason?
You didn't. You said the word reason, but that's what it is. You want some evidence, and with the evidence, you would examine it. So you have to have some reason. It's not just stupid blind faith. Well, evidence is an abstraction, and I talk about that, and it's subjective. What would be sufficient evidence for you that God exists might not be sufficient evidence for me, or vice versa. And as you say, and the listeners are probably saying, but Matt, he said God would know. Well, God certainly knows, and he can certainly do with his creation as he desires. That's Romans 9:9-23. And to say he doesn't care about you because he hasn't given you any evidence, that's a false conclusion. To say that he doesn't care about you might be that he's not giving you evidence because he cares about you, because maybe what you would then be doing is subjecting God to your own understanding and mind. Maybe that's the wrong thing to do. What we say in Christianity is...
Can we have any other understanding of God than the one in our own minds?
Yes, we can have the right one and then learn it. That's why God revealed himself in the Bible. That's why God revealed himself through the person and work of Jesus Christ, who died on that cross and rose from the dead 3 days later. Just like the Bible prophesied he would do, and just like Jesus prophesied he would do. You want evidence, go to the eyewitnesses who wrote what they saw. In a court, if you were on the jury and there was a man on trial and eyewitnesses came up and they said, well, I saw him do ABC, you'd take that seriously. But the Bible is not eyewitness like that. Okay, what if the eyewitness was on video? What if there was a video recording of someone not there in person? There's a video recording of what they saw. Would you consider that to be sufficient to believe? Okay, it's video recorded. Okay. Well, what about written record?
Well, Well, I just want to say, I just want to step in just for one little piece, is that obviously most people know that I'm an attorney, and true, people are put to death with eyewitness testimony. Somebody will say, this person did it, I was there, I saw it, and we put
They
people
could
to
be
death.
wrong.
But we have the Innocence Project, where I've been involved in cases where people have said, I've seen this, it's no other possible way, and then they weren't lying, they were just wrong about who they saw. For instance, there's a concept in law called race blindness. So that's what I'm saying. So eyewitness testimony, even though it's a very powerful tool, we put people to death with it, it's just not always accurate in that way.
Absolutely correct. What if, and Nate, you're an attorney, and the bad guy Bob is on the trial, and let's say 12 witnesses come through. They don't always give the exact same answer, but they're given the common thing. Yes, he did rob that store. I did see him with a gun. He was wearing a blue shirt. No, he's wearing a red shirt. But he had a gun and he robbed that store. No, he was wearing shorts, but no, the shorts are down past his knees. No, they're above his knees. No, but you'd say, okay, they're all saying the same thing, slightly different versions, but there's truth. And so I agree with you. We got to be careful about eyewitnesses, which is why the Bible says 2 witnesses, not just one, is what convicts. No, on just one, because the Bible knows people make mistakes. I certainly made mistakes. It happened once.
Let me let Shingen and get some more time in, because we're about to move on.
Okay.
Do you have any other question?
Can I finish a quick thought though?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, that's all right. So, in that evidence of the Bible is that written form from the eyewitnesses. Matthew was an eyewitness. John was an eyewitness. Paul was an eyewitness. Peter, Jude were eyewitnesses. They are eyewitnesses, and it'd be something worth considering. I mean, we could talk about all this, but you want evidence. God's already provided it for you in the best way that he could show the greatest act of love in the death of himself for the sins of people. And yet you look at that, and no disrespect meant to you, Shingen, but you look at it and say, and then you want him to give you something that you want. But he's already given you the work of Christ, who died on that cross, rose from the dead, and you reject it. Why should he give you anything else?
Well, Matt, let me let Shingen get a last question in, so we can move on. Go ahead, Shingen.
Well, I don't know if that will be a question, but regarding what Matt just asked, why would I want something else other than the Bible and the story of Christ, etc.? Well, one thing would be nice to have is a story that is actually historically accurate, because
it is accurate.
Well, as far as I know, now I don't remember the dates, but basically the Herod died like years before Jesus was allegedly born.
I've written on that on my website. You can go look at the answer, do the research.
Maybe.
The Bible has been shown repeatedly to be historically accurate. In fact, they just found something, I think it was Herod, the road that he had built. They just discovered it, and there's some other stuff. It continually is shown to be very accurate.
An interesting question came in from the chat. A response. Someone said, well, for instance, Paul, Saul of Tarsus, had the roadside conversion where Jesus came to him. So he was saying, well, that type of evidence was necessary for Paul. Wouldn't it be? What about Shingen? Could he respectfully ask that God give him that type of evidence?
He can't.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't ask God, because I don't believe he exists.
You're stuck.
I wouldn't.
So you have the evidence recorded by the eyewitnesses in the New Testament documents, which you don't want to accept. You haven't done your research. No disrespect meant. You've not done your research on the reliability and the authenticity of the documents. I have. They are very reliable, very accurately transmitted, and they're very, very early. I've done the research. That's what I do for a living. And it's accurate. But, Shingen, you're getting what you want. You're getting your atheism.
I guess, yeah, I want the truth.
I don't believe you do, really, and I don't mean to call you a liar. I don't think you want the truth. I think you want your truth.
If I if that can be that last question,
Sure.
Why would I want to be an atheist then? Like, why would that be my purpose?
Well, I don't know. Different atheists have different reasons for denying God, but generally speaking, biblically, it's because people want to be their own gods. They want to be the one in control of their own lives, not submit to the truth of God. And it's a prideful thing to do that and not a humble thing before God. God exhibited the greatest amount of humility in becoming one of us and subjecting himself to our tortures, our offenses, and in great humility and patience and love, he bore our sin so that we might have freedom in him. And so what people who do when they reject that are rejecting the greatest act of love. They're going to get what they want. The rejection of God, they're going to be left without that love, without that revelation, without that knowledge. They're going to be left with atheism. They're going to be left with something else. You're getting exactly what it is you desire. And, since you don't believe in God and you deny the reliability of the scriptures, God's going to let you have what you desire. I asked you early, what do you want? Do you want to believe? I'm asking you for a reason. And you don't want it. You don't want God. You don't want that truth.
That's the thing.
No.
I don't want to believe. I also don't want to not believe. I just want to know what is real, what is true. You may not agree with that. You may not believe me that I want that, but
we could get into the nature of what is truth and how do you know what truth is, and necessary preconditions for intelligibility and all kinds of stuff.
We have a couple of people we're trying to.
One last question for Shingen. What's your accent? What is your accent from?
I'm from Poland.
Poland? Oh. Speak to me in Polish. I want to hear a little bit. I know one Polish word. One Polish word I learned in high school. Gówna.
What was that?
Gówna. Gówna.
Gówna.
Or you mean główna, like main?
Yeah. A friend of mine taught it to me. He said it was not a good word. I don't know.
So you mean shit then?
Yeah. That's
Gówno.
what he said. Okay, there you go. That's what he said. Okay. All right. That's the only word I heard. So.
What's Shingen? Do you have anything other pressing? Because the next person gets some technical problems. Do you have anything other pressing or?
So yeah.
No. Go ahead. Thanks for the time.
All right. No. So thanks. We'll definitely be seeing you back. I know a couple more people are in the chat screaming, "Let us in! Let us in! Let us in!" So we'll see.
I'll stay longer if you guys want to. It's okay.
But thanks, Shingen. Thanks for stopping by and thanks for the great questions. And well, one thing, while we get the next guest set up, Matt, one thing, it seems to me in philosophy, there's never been an actual, there's always been like the difference between, let's say, compulsory beliefs and beliefs, something that you can believe in. Like, I've always been in the impression that all my beliefs are compulsory based on my experiences. Is that the wrong way to think about it, or is there some truth to that?
I'm not sure what you mean by compulsory. You mean they're forced upon you?
Like, for instance, I always use the example of if you set me down in this chair, tied me up, and put a gun to my head, and told me that if I, and you hooked me up to a lie detector. So I'm sitting here, I'm hooked up to a lie detector, and just for argument's sake, the lie detector test is perfectly accurate. It's going to tell exactly if I'm telling the truth or not. Someone puts a gun to my head and says, they're going to ask me one question. Do I believe in God? And I must answer yes. And if I answer yes, and the lie detector detects that that's a lie, that person is going to kill me, going to blow my brains out. If that, in that situation, I personally wouldn't be able to change my belief right then on the spot, because I couldn't be compelled, even under that type of stress, I couldn't be compelled to change my mind.
Right.
So if that's the case, then how can someone choose to believe in God versus being convinced?
Let me ask you a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't choose to believe in something, then is it your belief?
Well, I feel like I can be convinced of things. Like, I don't choose to believe in something. I'm just convinced of it. Oops, sorry, Brenda, you're chopping. But we can get into it. We can get into it a little bit.
We'll talk. Give me a call. You got my
Yeah,
number. We can talk
yeah.
about it sometime.
No, I just thought this is an interesting piece that
It
you're
is.
talking about.
No, it is. It's a good conversation because there are different levels of belief and commitment of the will to believe. Sometimes beliefs are forced on you, and other times you reason yourself into them based on previous information.
Okay.
There's levels of it. It's really a great discussion. It is.
Hey, Brenda, what's going on? I haven't seen you in such a long time. What's going on?
Good afternoon. Good evening. There's a lot of things going on with me. Do you have time for that?
Oh, I don't know if we have time for everything, but I know you, Brenda. You know
me. Well, any big news for me is that there's a program at the University of Minnesota here where people who are 62 and over can apply for and get into a special program where I can complete a degree, and I only have to pay a small fee for the credits. And I'm going to take advantage of that. And I have an application pending. They have to look back into 1975, which was the last time I was in post-secondary schooling. So I don't know, they have to look for stone tablets or something. But then I can once I get that all finalized, then I should be accepted into the school. And I plan to pursue an undergraduate degree at the University of Minnesota here in the spring.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, I hope
congratulations. And hopefully next time we'll see, you'll have that piece of paper.
It will take a while because I can only do it as a part-time student. I can't go full-time. And I'm older, so they'll have to sort of pound it into my head a little bit.
Well, we have our guest here, Matt, and do you have any questions for Mr. Slick?
Well, I'd like to know, I wasn't aware that he had an argument for God because I thought that he had abandoned his previous one. So I was wondering if he has some sort of new argument for God or what type of evidence or argumentation he is advancing that would be convincing that a deity should exist.
I can't help you.
Oh, so you don't have an argument for God?
I didn't say that.
Okay.
You said that would be convincing. Can't help you.
Well, I consider valid and sound arguments to be convincing. So you're saying you don't have a valid. You don't say what I hear you saying is that you do not have a valid, sound argument for God's existence.
I didn't say that.
Well, that's what I consider convincing.
Let me run this by you. Let's see how you are. Okay. Is the universe infinitely old or not infinitely old?
I don't know.
The universe is not infinitely old. If it were infinitely old, we would not be here for now because we'd have to cross an infinite amount of time to get to now. That's logically impossible. The Koch experiment also demonstrates that the universe had a beginning. Furthermore, if it were infinitely old, we'd be in a state of complete entropy right now, and we would not be able to have any discussions at all. The universe is not infinitely old. Okay?
What's your argument that an infinitely old universe can't be the case? You simply declared that. You didn't make an argument. Because there's no logical contradiction with the universe being infinitely old.
So if the universe is infinitely old, that means an infinite amount of time has passed, correct?
No. It means that we have always been here. The universe has always been here. Since what? Because the way you phrase your question presupposes that there was a beginning, which is not the case. If the universe is infinitely old, there wasn't a beginning. So it's always been here.
Okay. What do you want to say?
Yeah, there's no logical contradiction for infinity because, this has been understood for over 100 years. There's no logical contradiction with infinite sets.
Do you know what an actual infinite is versus a potential infinite?
This is not a term that anybody uses in mathematics. It's not a term used. We talk about infinite sets, not about actual and potential.
Excuse me. I keep asking you questions and you keep going off in different directions. I simply ask you, Do you know what an actual infinite is versus as compared to a potential infinite? Do you know?
These are not terms that anybody uses.
Okay.
These are nonsensical terms. These are not terms that
hold on,
mathematicians
hold on.
use to
Nate,
describe
Nate,
infinite sets.
Well, hold on. Let's do this. Let's do this. Matt, explain to us what those terms are, and then hopefully we can have the conversation from there.
Well,
right?
I will, but we're not able to have very much of a conversation with this person because the person doesn't, and no disrespect meant, but doesn't understand the basics of logic, philosophy, doesn't know enough in this area to be able to have
I'm sorry, but you're insulting me, and I actually do know about logic. You do not.
Well, hold on.
And what I'm saying is true. Mathematicians do not use these words. These are theological words that are made up.
Let me do this. Matt, for these two concepts that we're talking about, if you can, just give us some context about what you're speaking about, and so we can just move the conversation forward.
Yeah, I would just urge anybody to look up potential infinite and actual infinite. Just go to Google and type it in, and you'll see that what this person was saying was not accurate. That, say, mathematicians don't use it. I don't know if they do or don't, but the term is used. It's not made up by theologians. Philosophers are the ones who have been using this.
No.
Excuse. Okay, Nate, I'm done. Nate, I'm done. I tried talking, and he keeps interrupting. I can't get a word in to be able to really say what I want to say. He doesn't know what he's talking, or this person doesn't know what he's talking about. And if we move on to the next caller, I'll be glad to define and explain what infinite versus potential infinite, or actual versus potential.
Explain to me what you mean. Explain to me then what you mean by potential infinite.
Hold on. Let's all calm down. Let's do this.
Okay.
Matt was finishing his exactly what, because you had asked him what those words had meant, and the fact that you hadn't been exposed to them in your field of study. Matt was trying to explain. So just let him finish what he's saying.
I understand.
And you can come right back and explain why you don't believe it. So we can just have a good conversation all the way through. So Matt, I'm just going to give the floor to Matt, and then we're going to come right back to you, Brenda, and you can explain your point. Is that cool? That's fair?
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry. The floor is yours.
Done.
All right. Go ahead, Brenda.
Oh, okay. Well, so I have studied. I'm studied
this person anymore because
I'm actually. I thought I was talking.
I'll leave. Okay?
I thought I was talking.
10 seconds, or I'm leaving.
Well, hold on. Just let me let Brenda give what he's going to say, and then
it's she. By the way, thank you.
I'm sorry.
The thing is that I'm actually studying set theory, and there is no such thing as actual versus potential infinite. This is not a term that is used. I have several books on logic and set theory. I'm studying these things. There is nowhere in these books will I ever find the words potential and actual. These are not words that are used in philosophy today or in mathematics today. Nobody talks about these things. Nobody talks about the laws of logic. That's another thing that Matt likes to spew about. There is no such thing as the laws of logic. Logic is a branch of mathematics. It is not the foundation of math. There is no foundation of math. Foundationalism failed. Matt Slick knows nothing about logic or philosophy. He knows absolutely nothing. He was embarrassed and humiliated by Alex Malpass when he couldn't even understand negation. And he is an imbecile who knows nothing about logic.
Well, listen, Brenda, thank you for, again, I'm sorry that Matt unfortunately left, but thanks for coming on.
All right. I'm sorry, but
no, you and I wanted you to have your say, and if he wants to leave after you've had your say, then there's nothing I can do about it. We invited you on to have your say, and that was it. But listen, but thanks again.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you coming on too. It's so sorry that Matt, didn't stay on.
The point that to carry the carry away is that these terms, potential and actual infinite, are terms used by medieval theologians. It is not a term of art used in mathematics today. Nobody thinks this way. There is no logical contradiction in having an infinite set or an infinite period of time preceding or succeeding us. There's no logical contradiction. And this has been pointed out time after time to apologists like Matt and other presuppositionalists. Another favorite presuppositionalist argument is this idea about there being laws of logic, which are transcendent. And this is utter nonsense. Foundationalism was a project started in the early 20th century, and it failed. There isn't a foundation for logic. Logic is just a branch of mathematics. Mathematics is simply the study of right reasoning. That's all it is. It is a science, a study of right reasoning. There are no laws of logic because there are hundreds. Last I checked, I went to the Wolfram Alpha search engine, and this is the search engine that real nerds use, Wolfram Alpha, and searched for the number of formal systems. There was over 3,000 formal systems. That means axiomatic systems which have sets of axioms as their starting place. So if a presuppositionalist asks you as a non-believer what laws of logic are, ask him which one, because there's 3,000 of them.
I did, man. I did. You just educated me. I thought there was only 3, but you said 3,000.
And it gets worse. It gets worse. It gets worse because there are people researching now as a foundation for mathematics what is called homotopy systems, which have nothing to do with set theory at all. Well, there are people who are working on the foundations of math that have nothing at all to do with set theory. It's completely separate. Well, it has to do with category theory and type theory. Homotopy type theory.
Brenda,
right?
Brenda,
I'm sorry.
Hold on. Yeah, I don't mean to. I don't mean to cut.
I'm sorry.
Stream, but no, this is just me for the show. Just so everyone knows, Brenda and Matt were getting into a little squabble. So unfortunately, Matt left because
well, there's a history there. Matt has called me very horrible names back on the Bible Thumping Wingnut show. He's made disgusting comments about me. He despises because I'm trans. He's made disrespectful, hurtful remarks to me.
Brenda. I trust me. I after this conversation, I assume that you guys had maybe a little history. But what we are going to do now is that we're probably gonna be ending the show in probably just a minute. I'm just to do a quick outro. I want to thank all of our guests who came in to engage with Matt. I want to thank Brenda, Floyd. What are the other 2 gentlemen's names? I forget their names. I had them written down. Well, Michael's going to get in. Shingen, who came in, and who was the other person that came in? I forget his name. But if they all have channels, they're good. We will try to see if we can squeeze their channel links in the description. And I want to thank everybody for watching the show tonight. Sorry that Matt left a little early, but we're going to be doing more of these, theistic arguments for God to see if they can be convincing. Matt Slick was today, and we'll hope to have some more people on in the near future. So my name is Nate for the Magic Sandwich Show. Thanks again for everybody who came in. Thanks again for everybody who watched. We had like 100 live views, which was fantastic. And hopefully next week we will be seeing you guys soon. So let me see if there's any last things that we are going to do.
Google. People can Google Alex Malpass and Matt Slick for a PhD in logic and philosophy, utterly destroying Matt's favorite argument for God, which is why he doesn't use it anymore.
Well, also, link is now in the chat. So if you guys want to come in and talk to us off air, you guys are more than welcome to. My name is Nate, and we will be talking to you soon. So peace out, everybody. And thanks for watching.
Sorry for nuking your show.
No, you didn't nuke it. You came in. You came in. You made your piece, and if he's just not, if he doesn't want to, nothing I can do. I can't force him to stay here. I don't think you did anything wrong. So drag. Are you there, Mr. Producer? Are you going to kick us out? What's going on?